So we are recording now.
Great. Hello, everyone. Great to be with all of you. I'm Christine Jones. I'm currently an independent consultant with the Minnesota Department of Ed, specifically focused on helping more educators get up to speed with Bookshare in Minnesota. I worked for the Bookshare organization. It's called Benetech, the nonprofit that produces Bookshare. I worked there for almost 12 years. I was laid off just about a year ago, a little over a year ago, in a workforce reduction. So unfortunately, I'm no longer part of the staff, but I do still keep in touch with everybody over there. And Kirsten at MDE was kind enough to offer me some part-time work as a consultant right after I got laid off, which was terrific. And it allows me to continue being involved with Bookshare, which is great. So what I'm going to do today is go over some of the basics of Bookshare and make sure that you guys have sort of at least the introduction and know how to get started, how to sign up for an account and that kind of thing. And then we'll have another time. I think we were just confirming in 2 weeks on May 11th, where we'll get into more of the nuts and bolts of how students read books and how to assign books. But today, actually, let me bring up my PowerPoint and I'll just go through some quick points about Bookshare before we get into stuff on the website. Let's see here. We go. Okay. This is always so interesting because you share your screen and the first thing that comes up is the actual meeting. You're sharing the meeting on your screen. Okay, so I've kind of titled today, my slides should be coming up. Julie, maybe you can let me know if you see them.
Yep, they aren't quite up yet.
Great.
It looks like you're presenting, so they should be coming up soon.
Okay, great. So I've kind of titled today, Tools to Help Reluctant Readers Become More Enthusiastic Learners, because that's really what the goal of a service like Bookshare is to help students who have barriers to reading, who have challenges with reading because of specific disabilities or conditions that limit their ability to read in the way someone would who didn't have any of those barriers. And we want to be able to help them pass those barriers so that they become comfortable. I've heard some teachers describe it as sort of repairing some students' relationship with reading, right? Because oftentimes by the time they realize there's a problem, or their teachers or parents realize there's a problem, they are very frustrated about reading. And we're basically trying to give them the way past that, the way over that, so that they're to a place where they can really enjoy reading and learning. Reading obviously is such a critical part of our lives, and not just in school, but as we continue on through life. So we want to help students try to overcome their challenges with reading as early as possible. Okay, are my slides up?
Yep, they're coming through great.
Okay, great. All right. Let me just hide the stop sharing thing here. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm Christine. I'm currently a consultant with Minnesota Department of Ed, worked for Benetech, the parent company of Bookshare, for about 12 years. I was pretty deeply involved in the nuts and bolts of the product, in managing the customer support team, and also doing a lot of training and outreach with educators. Spent a lot of time in classrooms and in school districts around the country. So today you'll learn what Bookshare is, how it works, who qualifies for it, how to sign up for a Bookshare account, how to add students, and how to help students get individual memberships that can help them learn and read independently. One of the first things I want to do is have you bookmark this page, and let me actually grab it and I will put it right in the chat as well, because I'd like you guys to be able to bookmark this page. It's a really nice resource. It's relatively new. Let's see, chat. It's a relatively new resource, and it really does just sort of have everything in one place. Sorry, I'm trying to get to the chat window here. Okay, here we go. Okay, so please bookmark that page. It's a really nice overview of not only everything we're going to go over today, but much more, and walks through in much greater detail than we'll get to. And it's also pretty easy to find all the information that you're going to need. So briefly, what Bookshare is an ebook library that makes reading easier. And so basically people with conditions such as dyslexia, blindness, other types of visual impairments, physical disabilities that affect reading, they can read in ways that work for them. And they can, among their options, they can listen to books if they're maybe an audio reader or audio learner and they just want to listen to audio, they can do that. If they want the opportunity to follow along with highlighted text and the audio, they can do that. Every book in Bookshare is readable in that way with both text and audio available to them. They can also make the type really large if they have low vision and they just need large type. They can do that in all of the tools that access Bookshare books and read Bookshare books have the capability to make the type larger. For that matter, they can customize. We'll get into this a little bit more. The value of this, but they can customize a lot of things on the Bookshare book that they're reading, from the size of the font to the colors of the font to how fast or slow it reads to the voice that's used. There's a lot of, depending on the tool they're using to read, there's a lot of customization options. And they can read in Braille, either taking the files themselves and outputting hard copy Braille with a Braille generation device, or use digital Braille, such as with a Braille reader. So a lot of different ways to read the books. There's over 1 million titles, and in fact, books are being added 24/7. On the bottom half of the Bookshare website at bookshare.org, you'll see a counter of the number of books in the collection, and it will probably go up while we're having this conversation. So books are coming in all the time. It does contain a lot of textbooks, as well as books for just general assigned reading or pleasure reading, and a lot of how-to books. A really great collection of books for what we might call upskilling. A lot of books on coding. In fact, I heard somewhere that it has the best, the biggest collection of accessible versions of coding books, computer language books, than any other resource. So if someone is looking to learn a computer language, they can do that with a Bookshare book. It is free. It's federally funded. It's free for all qualified U.S. students of any age, funded by the U.S. Department of Ed. If someone has a qualifying condition and they're not a student, they can pay $50 a year, and that gives them unlimited number of books. So $50 a year for hundreds, literally, potentially thousands of books, if they have time to read that many, is a pretty good deal. So students who get started with Bookshare in school can continue to be Bookshare members throughout their lives, which is another value of giving them an individual membership that can stay with them when they're no longer with any school at all. They just need to pay the $50 a year, but oftentimes there are lots of benefits, such as, for example, books that they might want to read later in life for a skill that they're learning. I knew of someone who took her real estate exam with help from Bookshare, because all the books she needed for that were in Bookshare. Or books that they'll need for different aspects of their adult life, everything from looking for a job to interviewing and preparing a resume, to so many different aspects of adult life are catered to as well in the Bookshare collection. So we definitely encourage lifelong memberships. And it's a pretty easy, the student will just be prompted to convert their account to a paid account at that point. And I do want to point out that the free memberships do last all the way through any kind of education. So through, and I say here, students of any age. So we're talking high school, college, any post-secondary training or education that students get. And then, later, if they might stop being a student right now, they might finish for now, but maybe later in life, they go back to get more education or more certification, and they should be able to resume a free membership at that point as well. And as I mentioned before, customized reading on nearly any device. So whether a student reads on a tablet or a phone or a Chromebook or a desktop computer, there's a lot of different ways to read. And speaking of, here are just some of the many ways to read the book. So on Chromebooks and computers, Bookshare offers its own web reader, which is a free web-based reader that allows students to read right in the browser. They just click a button that says read now when they find a book they like, and they open it up and read it. They can enhance that experience, which we highly recommend, with some tools, some add-on tools available in the different browsers, such as Read and Write for Google Chrome, which actually is also available on Safari and Edge, as well as John Johnson's Snap and Read. I know those two companies have now combined, so those two tools may eventually be combined into one, but they're still two separate tools right now. Captive Voice is another great option. They have a web-based platform as well as an iOS app. And then all books in Bookshare can be downloaded as Microsoft Word documents and read using just Word, and enjoying all of the customization options available in Word, like adding one's own notes and comments and highlights, and printing out just one page at a time, or having one chapter at a time available to you on a device. I mean, a lot of options available in using Word. And certainly lots of easy ways to read on the different tablets and phones with some apps: Dolphin Easy Reader, Captive Voice, and VoiceStream Reader. I do want to make mention of the fact that Bookshare recently made a public announcement about a new suite of reading tools that they're going to be putting out starting this summer, which is going to be a much improved version of Bookshare Web Reader, as well as eventually later in the fall, an iPad or iOS and Android version of the web reader that will act and read very similarly. Some of the complaints people have about Bookshare lately is just that, if students are using different devices, they oftentimes are using different tools on those devices. So they might be reading in Bookshare Web Reader on their Chromebook and Dolphin Easy Reader on their iPad when they go home, and those two tools function a little bit differently. So it's a lot for student and teachers to know how to support multiple tools. But in the future, in the relatively near future, that won't be an issue, because Bookshare is coming out with a suite of readers. And actually, if you go to, in fact, at the end, I'll put a link in the Bookshare website to the place where the announcement is made, so you can read the details. But that's exciting. So that's coming. So let's get into a question that everyone has when they hear about Bookshare, which is who qualifies. And just to make it really clear, the qualifications are determined by copyright law. And basically what happens here is, it was a couple of decades ago, a group of Congress people got together and said, we should make materials available in alternate formats to people who need them, in an alternate format, and make it so that that's not a violation of copyright law to provide them to them. And so basically, it's an exception to copyright law that was again revised a few years ago. And so the new language says that an eligible person for a service like this is one who is either blind or has a visual impairment or perceptual or reading disability that, in short, it basically says renders them unable to read printed works to substantially the same degree as a person without an impairment or disability, or someone who is otherwise unable through physical disability to hold or manipulate a book, or to focus or move the eyes to the extent that it would be normally acceptable for reading. And all of that is determined by what the law calls a competent authority. So somebody who has the experience in making such determinations is basically what the guidance from Congress says. And Bookshare also has a cross-qualification agreement with both Learning Ally and the National Library Service for the blind and print disabled. So if an individual is a member of either of those organizations, that membership can also be used as a basis for applying or being a member in Bookshare. So I'm actually going to stop there. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to stop there and get back to, let's see here, the meeting, and just open it up for any questions. We'll take maybe a couple minutes. There we go. A couple minutes to address any questions that you all have about anything I've covered so far.
And feel free to type them in the chat window. I can read them aloud, or if you want to pick up the mic, feel free to do that as well.
Okay. Everybody seems to be with me so far. Amazing. Usually I get, oh, Emily, did you have a question? No? Okay. Usually I get, well, what about this condition or that student or whatever? But hopefully what I shared was clear enough. So, all right, great. Let me go back to my presentation. We'll keep going. Okay, and there are two types of accounts. It'll probably take a minute for my slides to come up here, but there are two types of accounts in Bookshare. There's an organizational account, which basically teachers create or an administrator creates, and they're in the Bookshare system, the facilitators, the people who are facilitating access to books for students are called sponsors. And the students are called members because the students are really the ones who are benefiting from the service. And the students the teachers assign books to them. The students log in, find books, and then read. Students can only access books that are shared with them by their teachers in that scenario. The second type of membership is an individual membership where a student and or a parent can sign up a student. If they do this separate and apart from the school, they do need to complete a proof of disability form. The system will prompt them to print it out. They have to go either get it physically signed, or there was a digital workaround that Bookshare was offering during the pandemic that I think they left in place. So there are a couple of different ways to submit that proof of disability, but there does need to be proof of disability provided by a competent authority. However, if the student is already on a school account, no additional proof of disability is needed, and that this is really the best way to do that. And so then when a student has an individual membership, they can log in, search for books, and read, and they don't have to wait for a teacher to assign a book to them. So it's really the best possible scenario is for a student to start out on a school account and then have an individual account added to that school account. So teachers can assign books to them because there is a situation often when a teacher needs to say, hey, you need to, read this book for this class or whatever. But students also have the ability to go in and search for their own books. So that's really the best possible scenario. And we'll kind of go through how that works.
We aren't seeing your slides yet.
You're not. Shoot.
No, you want to try and reshare maybe again?
Yeah, let me try resharing. Yeah. Oh, it says, sorry, an error has occurred when screen sharing. Yeah, okay. Well, that's true. You're not diagnosing the problem, though. You're just telling me there's a problem. Thank you. Let's try that again. Okay. Tell me when you can see the slides, Julie.
It's showing that you're starting to present, so it'll probably just take another second before the slides are up, but it's looking like it's coming through.
Good. Yeah, it says I'm sharing my screen, so.
Yep, we see your slides now.
Okay, yay. All right, so this is what I just went through, the organizational and individual types of accounts. And as I said, really the best scenario is when a student starts out on an organizational account and gets an individual membership added to that school account. So then they really have both types of access, and the teachers can assign books to them, but they can search for their own books as well. And I'll explain how to do that. So getting started with Bookshare is really easy. You can either create an organizational account or log in if you already have one or your school already has one. You can add qualified students. Then you assign books. You can either assign books one book at a time, so you can go in and sort of search for an individual title and assign that to a student, or Bookshare has made hundreds of ready-made lists of books available that you can assign to your students en masse. So basically, for example, the entire Harry Potter collection or the entire Diary of a Wimpy Kid collection, or all these different collections of books, you can assign them in their entirety to students. And so that when they log in, they see that entire collection of books available to them. We do know from research that when a student likes a book or likes an author, they're very much more inclined to read more from that author or on that subject. So providing more than one book at a time is always a good strategy. So then students get started by either signing up or logging in and then finding books and reading. So let's quickly take a minute to go to the Bookshare website, and I'll show you how how to create an account. Let's see here. I'm trying to get my website to come up here. Okay. Okay, so you should be, as soon as it comes up here, you should be seeing the Bookshare website. Anybody, are you seeing it?
Yep, looks great.
Great. Okay. So this is bookshare.org, and it is important to take note of this note here. It looks like the Bookshare offices are going to be closed Friday, the 15th. So it looks like they're getting a 3-day weekend, which is wonderful. So the way that you create an account, if you haven't already started the sign or you haven't signed up previously, under Get Started, let's see, sign up. And then you'll choose, most of you will be choosing an organizational membership here. If you were a parent helping a child sign up who has a qualifying condition, you would go through this. You could go through this route here, a sign up individual, but we're going to stick with sign up organization. And so basically then it takes you through a few steps. This first one is, you pick what type of organization you are, and then it's going to have you try to find your school in here. I will say, I'm not going to go through the whole process here for the sake of time, but I will say that a few years ago, they made a change to this system so that if your school already has a Bookshare account set up, a functioning Bookshare account, our system is going to say, would you like us to reach out to them and have you added? And you're welcome to do that. I will say that has proven to not always be a really effective way to go about it, because as you can imagine, if you were a busy educator and got a prompt from Bookshare that, hey, so-and-so, and maybe somebody you don't even know wants to get added to the Bookshare account, it doesn't always happen. And we don't then really go in and just add you anyway. So what you could do, if the system, when you put in your school information here, if the system tells you there's already an account set up at your school, you could try going through that process. Or you could try to just inquire internally around your district to see if anybody knows who manages the Bookshare account at your school and you can get added. Or you can just check the box that says, no, that's not actually my school, and in which case the system will allow you to just go ahead and create a new account. They set the system up a few years ago because they're trying to minimize duplication. And you can imagine that teachers go in and sign up, create an account, and there was already an account at the school. It tends to create a little confusion. Some people get, a little frustrated. Hey, why do you have your own Bookshare account? We already have one. So it's not ideal, but our goal is to get books to students as quickly as possible on Bookshare. So if it's going to be a major, administrative nightmare to find out who runs the Bookshare account and get added, you could certainly just check the box that says, no, that's not actually my school, and create a new account to serve your students. So whichever way you do it, it'll take you through a couple of steps here to do the sign up process. As it says here, you're filling out information about you, the organization, then you, the person, who the Bookshare calls the primary contact, the main contact on the account. You'll put some information about yourself, and then you agree to Bookshare's terms. And then you can add additional teachers and students to the account, even while your account is going through the process of being approved, which usually just takes a day or two. Let me go ahead, and I'm going to log into my organizational account as though I had already signed up, an organization I've already signed up for. Let's just go back to the main Bookshare site, but now I'm logged in. And if I go to my Bookshare is sort of your home base, your dashboard. So I see, when I log in, I see, first of all, I can go to my list of members. That's my students. And I have a couple of fake students on here. And I can see what types of memberships they have. So currently, this student, 3020, only has a school account organization, but my other two students, I'm not sure. Julie, can you confirm that you guys can see this?
Yep, we can see it great.
Okay, great. So the other two students, it says here, have org plus individual, which means that they have that nice combination of they have access to the school account and the teacher can share books with them, but they also have an individual membership. So the way that you would add a member here is using this add a member button, or at the top of the screen, this little person with a plus sign. It brings up a dialog box. You need some information about your student. You need their, obviously, first name, last name, their birth date, their current grade, and you're going to need to check which type of disability qualifies them for Bookshare, visual, learning, or physical. And then we do ask, Bookshare does ask if the student has an IEP or is served under 504. You will notice that this is an optional field, the field of plans, and that's because there are going to be some situations in which a student doesn't have either one of those but still qualifies for Bookshare. So we leave that, we do want you to fill it in, but there is the option to not fill in anything there. And then what we want you to do is assign a username and password.
I see that Jill has her hand up. I don't know if you wanted to take a moment and answer.
Sure. Go ahead, Jill.
But I'm just wondering about, I don't know if this sounds quirky, but do we need to get releases to do this, to put students' names and identify that they have an IEP and what their disability is? Just feels a little concerning to do that. I just didn't know if you've encountered that before.
Oh yeah, it comes up all the time. I mean, in general, these are questions that are pretty common for, servicing students. Bookshare, as a an organization who works with schools and students, takes privacy and confidentiality very seriously. So we go through many steps to make sure that all this information is protected. The Bookshare team does, and all of that. However, if you are really uncomfortable with it, you can certainly, Bookshare makes it possible for you to use pseudonyms. So you would just, make up a name for your student. And then you would have to just keep a list of sort of, what does John Doe equate to? Who on your end is John Doe? So you could use pseudonyms. They do ask you to do one additional step in order to do that, but that is very possible. But yeah, and I can point you to some information on the Bookshare website about Bookshare's efforts to not only conform with privacy concerns, but that they are very protective of that student information.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm glad we can use pseudonyms.
Yeah. So you assign here a username and password for the student, and that's really important because that's how they're going to log into this account. So once you fill in all that information and you click save, then they come up in your member list and you can start assigning books to them, which is what we'll cover next time. You can also use the same method to add other teachers to the account. They're called sponsors, and that is over here on the left also. And so I have another fake teacher on my book demonstration account, but it's a very similar process. You can click that box, you can fill in all their information. Once they are filled in here, they get an email. They get an email actually encouraging or prompting them to set a password. So you don't necessarily need to put a password here, which is why this is not a required field. But you can, if you wanted to set a password and then tell that teacher, hey, this is the password I put for you, you can do that. Otherwise, you can leave it blank and they'll be prompted to set a password. And it's a great idea to add other teachers who are going to need to log in and assign books to students or help with their use of Bookshare. So once you've assigned or you've created an account, you've added students, you can start assigning books to them right away. Bookshare will just need to check to make sure that you've signed everything and agreed to everything, and everything looks to be in order. And then they'll give your account a little, check a box on the back end that allows your account to function. And at that point, students are able to access the books that you assign to them. So why don't we stop here? We're at the end of our time, but let me stop and see if there are any other questions that I can answer. So stop presenting here. Okay, I've got a.
And again, feel free to microphone, unmute yourself, type in the chat window with any questions you've got.
So Julie, you put in the different, accounts and who's what.
That's great. I just dropped in the chat chat window who the primary contacts are for certain districts and co-ops. I don't have a list of everyone, and so you can always reach out to your director or coordinators to see if your district or co-op already has an account. And if they do, they'd be able to add you as a sponsor. If not, as Christine was mentioning, you could set up that account and then even have the responsibility of adding other sponsors. So another option.
Yeah, let me just share I'll just put in the chat a link to the announcement about the Bookshare Reader Suite that's coming out soon. Let's see, where am I?
I'm excited about that, Christine. Cool.
Yes, yeah, I think that's going to be huge. Okay, so you guys can copy that link and have that, take a look at that announcement. That's about the readers that are coming out. I think that's going to make life a lot easier. Of course, they'll continue to support, Dolphin Easy Reader and the other apps that have been using, people have been using, but that's some good information there. And then let me get the privacy information, and I'll put a link to that in the chat as well.
Beautiful, thanks. And while you're doing that, just a reminder that on May 11th, registration information will be coming out in the next couple of weeks for the session on May 11th that Christine is also doing for us, which will be about how students can then read the books and all the different options for that. So going much more in depth on the actual reading of the books. So that's coming up.
Yep.
Keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, I just put a link into the whole explanation about privacy and how Bookshare treats those concerns. So I'll definitely take a look at that as well. Any other questions that I can answer? I mean, one thing you guys can do whenever you want to is just go to bookshare.org and try searching for books. You'll be amazed actually at the breadth of the collection. Very rarely do I have a time when have I experienced when an educator, I say, what book would you like me to search for? And they give me a book title, and almost every time it's in the collection already. So take a look at what's in there and maybe learn a little bit about the different ways that students read. And then we'll get into that in more detail on May 11th.
Great. And I'm going to stop recording, but feel free to hang around and ask any questions that you've got.
Yeah, great. Yep.